From ancient empires to not-so-distant pasts, humanity has devised ways to punish, to deter, to end life. But beyond the simple blade or the quick drop, there existed methods of execution so agonizing, so cruelly prolonged, they beggar belief. Methods designed not just to kill, but to inflict the absolute maximum amount of suffering. Today, Dark Truth Files dares to ask the unthinkable. What were the most painful execution methods ever conceived in history? And what dark truths do they reveal about the human capacity for cruelty? This journey is not for the faint of heart. Introduction: Beyond the Quick End. The psychology of torturous execution. For centuries, capital punishment has been a tool of states and rulers. But a significant chapter in this grim history involves methods specifically crafted for extreme pain, not just death. This was about power, terror, and often a chilling spectacle. The purpose of pain. These methods weren't about efficiency, they were about deterrents, sending a visceral message to anyone considering defiance. Spectacle, public displays of ultimate power and control. Retribution, inflicting suffering believed to match the perceived crime. Psychological warfare, breaking the condemned long before their last breath. We will explore methods from various civilizations, spanning millennia, revealing the disturbing ingenuity behind these techniques. From ancient Roman ingenuity to medieval barbarity, these are the dark chapters where death was just the painful conclusion. Method 1. Scaphism, the boat of no return. Imagine being trapped, exposed, and slowly consumed. Scaphism, an ancient Persian method, is a horrifying example of prolonged, agonizing exposure and infestation. The setup, the boats, the condemned was placed naked within two boats or hollowed-out tree trunks, fitted together so that only their head, hands, and feet protruded. The diet: they were force-fed milk and honey until they developed severe diarrhea. This was crucial for the method's ultimate goal. The exposure: the boats were then left floating on a stagnant pond or river, exposed to the elements, the sun beating down, flies swarming. The agony: insect infestation. The combination of milk, honey, and excrement quickly attracted swarms of insects. Flies would lay eggs on the exposed skin, eyes, nose, and mouth. These eggs would hatch into maggots, which would then begin to feed on the flesh, slowly devouring the person alive. Dehydration and disease. While constantly fed, the condemned would suffer from extreme dehydration, sunstroke, and the rapid spread of infection from the festering wounds. Psychological horror. The victim was fully conscious throughout this process, experiencing the sensation of being eaten alive, tormented by thirst and the unrelenting sun, aware of their slow, undignified decay. Death could take days, sometimes even weeks. The thought of insects consuming you alive is horrific enough. But in Scaphism, the very sustenance provided, the milk and honey, turned your body into a living, breathing breeding ground for your tormentors. The method ensured you were just alive enough to feel every bite, every crawl. How could humans devise such a meticulously agonizing end, where the victim desperately craved a swift death, but was denied even that mercy for days on end? Method 2. The Brazen Bull. The symphony of screams. A chilling blend of engineering and sadism. The Brazen Bull turned human suffering into a gruesome public spectacle, transforming screams into music. The setup: the bronze bull, invented by Perellos of Athens for Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas. It was a large, hollow bull cast from bronze, with an opening on one side large enough to fit a person. Acoustic engineering. Inside the bull's head, an intricate system of tubes and stops was designed to amplify and transform the victim's screams. The agony: incineration. The condemned was placed inside the bull, and a fire was lit beneath it. The bronze would slowly heat up, turning the interior into an oven. Slow roasting. The victim would be slowly roasted alive, experiencing intense heat, suffocation from smoke, and agonizing burns that progressed over hours. The music, as the victims screamed in agony. Their cries would travel through the tubes in the bull's head, emerging as sounds that resembled the bellowing of a bull or haunting musical notes. This perverse design allowed the tyrant to listen to the music of his victim's suffering. Death could take many hours, depending on the intensity of the fire. Imagine your last moments, your agonizing screams, being engineered into a macabre performance for your tormentors. The Brazen Bull wasn't just an execution. It was a perverted piece of art, turning suffering into entertainment. What kind of mind could conceive of such a device, and what does it say about societies that tolerated, even celebrated, such an extreme fusion of torture and spectacle? Method 3. Breaking on the wheel. The cartwheel of misery. A method designed to inflict maximum bone-shattering pain, breaking the victim limb by limb before a prolonged public death. The setup is the wheel. A large wooden wagon wheel, often with spokes, was typically used. The rack platform. The condemned was stretched out and tied to a cross or a specific platform, with their limbs positioned over wooden blocks, usually corresponding to their major joints. The agony. Systematic bone shattering. An executioner would use a large, heavy iron bar or club to systematically break every bone in the victim's limbs, often starting with the ankles and working upwards. Each strike would shatter a bone, causing unimaginable pain. The process was slow and deliberate. The weaving. Once all limbs were broken, the victim was often woven through the spokes of the wheel, their mangled body bent into unnatural positions. Public display and prolonged death. The wheel, with the broken victim still alive and conscious, would then be hoisted onto a tall pole for public display. Death would be a slow process, due to shock, dehydration, blood loss, and exposure to the elements. Birds might even pick at the still living victim. This could last for hours, sometimes even days, before eventual death or a final, merciful blow from the executioner. The methodical shattering of every limb, bone by agonizing bone, before being left to die on public display. Breaking on the wheel wasn't just about killing, it was about destroying the body, slowly and painfully, making a horrifying example out of the condemned. What profound terror must have gripped those who witnessed such a meticulous dismantling of a human being, knowing their own bones could be next. Method 4. Lingchi, death by 1,000 cuts. Lingchi, often translated as death by 1,000 cuts or slow slicing, was an execution method from Imperial China notorious for its prolonged and ritualistic nature. The setup, public spectacle. Lingchi was always a public execution meant to instill fear and demonstrate absolute imperial power. The knife. A skilled executioner would use a very sharp knife. The agony. Gradual disfigurement. The method involved the removal of small pieces of flesh from the body over an extended period. This was highly ritualized, with specific cuts to non-fatal areas of the body first. Prolonged consciousness. The goal was to prolong life and consciousness for as long as possible, maximizing the agony. Opium was sometimes given to prevent immediate shock or to prolong the ordeal even further. Symbolic dismemberment. As the execution progressed, more vital organs might be exposed, and eventually the head would be severed, or the heart pierced as the final, fatal blow. The process could last for hours. Extreme humiliation. Beyond the physical pain, the method inflicted extreme humiliation and spiritual degradation, as the body was dismembered, denying the victim a complete form in the afterlife, according to some beliefs. Imagine experiencing your own body slowly being carved away, piece by piece, in front of a horrified crowd, your life draining away with each shallow cut. Lingchi was more than just an execution. It was a grotesque ritual of psychological and physical destruction, designed to annihilate not just the body, but the very essence of the condemned. How does a society justify such an elaborate and prolonged act of human torment, turning a death sentence into an unimaginable theater of pain? Method 5. Impalement. The long fall to death. A truly barbaric method, impalement involved piercing the victim through the body with a large stake, ensuring a slow and agonizing demise. The setup, the stake, a long, sharpened wooden or metal stake was prepared. The victim, the condemned, was typically forced onto the stake, or the stake was driven through their body. The agony, slow internal piercing. The stake would enter through the rectum and slowly, by gravity or by being driven, would ascend through the body, piercing organs, causing immense internal bleeding and pain. Prolonged suffering. The sharp point was often designed to emerge near the shoulder or neck, avoiding vital organs initially to prolong life. The victim would then be left to hang, slowly sliding down the stake, their weight causing the stake to penetrate deeper. Exposure and shock. Death would come from shock, blood loss, dehydration, and eventual organ failure. This could take hours, sometimes days, with the victim conscious for much of it, experiencing unspeakable internal agony and external exposure. It was a common method used by figures like Vlad the Impaler. The thought of a stake slowly tearing through your insides, driven deeper by your own weight, for hours or even days. Impalement wasn't just a brutal death, it was an act of profound dehumanization, a horrifying display of absolute power. What unspeakable terror must have filled the last moments of those left to dangle and writhe, knowing their life was being slowly consumed from within, in full public view. Conclusion. The dark reflection. Lessons from history's cruelest chapters. These are but a few examples of humanity's darkest ingenuity when it comes to inflicting pain. From Scaphism's horrific embrace of insects to the Brazen Bull's agonizing heat. From the bone-shattering wheel to the slow cuts of Lingchi, and the visceral agony of impalement. Each method tells a chilling story. The enduring questions. What drove humans to conceive of such prolonged suffering? How did societies justify and even ritualize such cruelty? And what does it say about our nature that these methods, though relegated to history, still evoke such primal fear? While modern justice systems largely condemn such practices, the psychological impact and the underlying desire for ultimate control still echo in various forms of punishment today. The purpose of revisiting these grim historical realities is not to sensationalize, but to understand the depths of human capacity for both cruelty and resilience. These methods of execution represent humanity's capacity for devising truly horrific ends. They are a stark reminder that the desire to inflict pain, to exert ultimate control, is a dark shadow that has followed civilization for millennia. We may believe we have evolved beyond such barbarity, but by understanding these dark truths, we can ask ourselves, are we truly free from the impulses that once conceived the most painful ways to die? Or do these methods serve as a haunting mirror, reflecting a capacity for cruelty that still exists within the human heart? For more chilling insights into history's darkest truths, the unexplained and the unseen, make sure to subscribe to Dark Truth Files.